I stared out of my apartment window, the city lights flickering like tiny promises I had long ago stopped believing in. My silk blouse brushed against my skin, smooth and almost comforting, and the scent of fresh coffee lingered in the air, grounding me. Everything looked perfect, my life, my career, the image I presented to the world, but there were corners of memory I'd tucked away, corners my mother's words had tried to burn into me. And then my phone buzzed. A single message from an unknown number. Dad wanted you to see this. The drawer he always talked about. I felt a flicker of something I hadn't let myself feel in years. Curiosity, suspicion, a trace of old hurt. My fingers hovered over the screen, my heart picking up pace, and I caught the faint clink of the gold bracelet on my wrist. Mom had always told me I didn't deserve a dime from him. But this was different. This was an invitation, a challenge, and maybe even a kind of redemption. I leaned back, letting the city hum around me. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine opening that drawer, seeing what my father had left behind for me, and realizing that maybe, just maybe, I was exactly where I was supposed to be, ready to rewrite the story. I was 17 when Mom told me I didn't deserve anything from Dad. I can still hear the sharp edge in her voice, slicing through the quiet kitchen where the sunlight fell in harsh lines across the floor. You don't deserve a dime, she said, eyes flashing with a mixture of anger and disappointment. So don't even think about asking. My hands were trembling, clutching the edge of the counter like it could keep me from falling apart. I remember the lump in my throat, the taste of unshed tears, the sharp sting of disbelief. It wasn't just the words, it was the weight behind them, the certainty that I had been written out of my own story before it even began. I wanted to argue, to scream, to demand some shred of fairness, but I couldn't. Instead, I felt myself shrinking under the intensity of her judgment, my own voice swallowed by years of "you're not enough," rehearsed in whispers and sideways glances. Then Grandma's words came back to me, soft but unwavering. "Olivia, you have to own your worth, even if no one else can see it yet." Grandma had given me a small silver locket on my 16th birthday, telling me it wasn't about who gave you what, but what you carried in your own hands and heart. I had tucked it beneath my shirt every day since, a tiny weight of hope against the heaviness of rejection. That afternoon, I walked out the door, the kitchen fading behind me, and felt the sharp, exhilarating sting of independence. I wasn't ready to take anything from anyone who doubted me, not my mother, not even my father, if he followed her lead. I promised myself I'd forge my own path, that I'd create something no one could take away. I didn't know how yet, and I certainly didn't know how long it would take, but the fire had started. And from that fire, I would build something that was mine, that reflected the person I truly was, not the person they said I was. I didn't have much when I left home. Just my backpack, the silver locket from Grandma, and a stubborn streak that refused to bow to anyone's expectations. My first apartment was tiny, the walls thin enough to hear every argument from the neighbors, but it was mine. I painted them a pale cream color, hung a few framed photos from my teenage years, and let the faint scent of lavender from a cheap candle fill the space. It wasn't glamorous, but it was freedom. I got my first real job as an assistant at a small marketing firm. My boss, Mr. Reynolds, was gruff at first, but he had an eye for potential. He noticed when I stayed late to perfect a presentation, when I drafted emails no one else wanted to touch, and when I solved problems quietly without needing applause. "You've got grit, Olivia," he said one evening as we watched the city lights flicker through the office window. "Keep it. It'll take you places." Grit became my currency. Nights bled into mornings. Coffee cups piled up next to stacks of notebooks filled with ideas, client strategies, and drafts of my own dreams. I learned to navigate office politics, to fight stereotypes that whispered I was too young, too quiet, or too inexperienced to succeed. Each small victory felt monumental. My first client win, the first pay raise, the first time a campaign I led went viral. I felt the quiet swell of pride, but I kept it hidden from my family. They didn't need to see it, and I didn't need their approval anymore. In secret, I started investing in myself. Online courses, networking events, late-night reading. Every resource I could find became a stepping stone. I built my savings meticulously, never touching the principal, always thinking ahead. I even bought my first piece of real estate without telling anyone, laughing softly to myself when Mom's words echoed in my mind. You don't deserve a dime from him. I didn't need it. I was earning my way, and that felt sweeter than any inheritance. Mentorship continued to shape me. Sarah Thompson, a seasoned marketing director I met at a workshop, became a guide and a friend. She pushed me harder than anyone else, told me when I was playing small, and celebrated my wins like they were her own. She was the proof I needed that talent and perseverance could break through even the harshest walls of doubt. By the time I turned 25, I had quietly amassed enough to start my own boutique agency. I rented a modest office, decorated it with art that spoke to my journey, and hired a small team of young creatives who shared my vision. My life was no longer about survival, it was about creation, control, and ownership. And though I kept the details of my success from my family, every morning when I touched the silver locket at my desk, I felt the quiet power of a girl who had learned to stand on her own. It was a life built in shadows, yes, but it was mine, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. The knock on my office door startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not my mother. When I opened it, she and my younger brother, Ethan, were standing there, their expressions a mix of suspicion and the faintest trace of pity. Mom's eyes darted around the room as if expecting to see a cramped cubicle or a stack of unpaid bills. Ethan's jaw was tight. He always had been the cautious one. Olivia, Mom began, her voice faltering. We thought maybe. I held up a hand. Please sit, I said, motioning to the leather chairs in front of my desk. Take your time looking around. I'll wait. The room was quiet, save for the faint hum of the city below. Expensive abstract art adorned the walls. A tall bookshelf held both business awards and novels I loved, and my desk gleamed with the polished confidence of someone who had carved her life from nothing. Mom's gaze lingered on the framed photo of my first campaign win, and I saw the recognition, quickly masked by denial, cross her face. I watched her shift uncomfortably, noticing for the first time the faint lines of regret on her face. Ethan, on the other hand, couldn't hide his curiosity. He took a tentative step closer, eyes scanning my desk, my neatly arranged files, my laptop with dashboards displaying revenue charts. Finally, I spoke. Mom, you told me I didn't deserve a dime from Dad. You told me I wasn't worthy of anything he left behind. I walked away, and I built my own worth. I paused, letting the words settle, like a stone in the air. I didn't need anyone to hand me anything. I earned it. Every dollar, every achievement, every step of this journey is mine. I opened a drawer in my desk, the same one my father had once mentioned to me in a quiet conversation years ago. Inside were neatly organized files, stock certificates, and account details. This, I said, holding up a folder labeled Legacy Fund, is what Dad set aside for me. And it's real. Every bit of it. I just wanted you to see it. Mom's eyes widened, lips parting slightly. She stared at the folder, then back at me, as if seeing me for the first time. Ethan's hands fidgeted with the edge of a sweater, disbelief and admiration battling across his face. Olivia, Mom started, then stopped. Words failed her. I leaned back in my chair, smiling faintly but firmly. You don't get to dictate my worth anymore. You missed that chance years ago. Now I decide what to do with it and who gets to be a part of my life moving forward. The room was silent for a long, heavy moment. Then, slowly, Mom and Ethan began to take in the reality before them. Not a struggling girl in need, but a woman who had quietly transformed herself into someone powerful, independent, and unshakable. Every glance they cast around the office, every microexpression, told me they were recalibrating everything they thought they knew about me. For the first time in my life, I felt the intoxicating mix of vindication and liberation. The past had been heavy, cruel, and unfair. But this was my moment. And for the first time, I knew they couldn't take it away. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch, watching them absorb the reality of the life I had built. The air was thick with a mixture of awe, shame, and hesitation. I could feel the power shift in the room, a quiet but undeniable recognition that the girl they once dismissed had become the woman who held all the cards. "I'm going to be clear," I began, my voice steady but gentle. "This doesn't mean I won't help. But it does mean things will be different. You can't step back into my life expecting the old rules." Mom swallowed, her eyes welling slightly, but she didn't interrupt. I continued. "If you want to be part of my world, there are conditions. First, honesty. No more lies, no more excuses, no more undermining each other. That includes me and you, Mom. We all start fresh, or not at all." Ethan nodded subtly, the first sign of understanding, though his expression still carried skepticism. I pressed on. "Second, responsibility. You both need to pursue your own paths, to stand on your own feet. I won't be the safety net for old habits. I've built this life with my hands, and I won't let it slip away because someone else refuses to try." Mom's face paled, but I could see the recognition of truth in her eyes. "Third, respect. That means valuing each other's choices, boundaries, and successes, even when they don't align with what you imagined for us." I paused, letting my words sink in. "I care about both of you," I admitted, softer now, "but caring doesn't mean I'll compromise my peace, my dignity, or my achievements. I've earned this life, and I intend to live it fully." I reached into my drawer and held up the silver locket Grandma had given me years ago. "This is a reminder of why I walked away, why I worked hard, and why I will never let anyone define my worth again. If you want to be part of my journey, you respect the rules and the woman I've become." Mom blinked rapidly, swallowing hard. Ethan's eyes softened, and I could see the internal recalibration beginning. They were processing that nothing would be handed to them, but the door to redemption, reconciliation, and a healthier relationship was now wide open. On my terms. I ended with a firm, even note. "I will help, I will support, I will celebrate, but only if the effort comes from you. Nothing less. And make no mistake, this is not punishment. It's the only path forward that allows us all to grow." The room remained quiet, charged with a tension that was no longer about confrontation but potential. For the first time, I wasn't a child in need of approval. I was a woman in control, blending compassion with authority, love with boundary, and strength with grace. They had no choice but to listen, to reflect, and to change or to step back. And for the first time, I felt a calm certainty that whatever they chose, my life, my success, and my dignity would remain entirely my own. Weeks passed after that meeting, and the changes were subtle but undeniable. Mom stopped questioning my choices and began taking small steps toward her own goals, enrolling in a course she'd always wanted to try. Ethan started his own freelance business, hesitant at first, but gradually gaining confidence with each completed project. I watched them, quietly proud, knowing that these changes weren't for me. They were for themselves. My life settled into a new rhythm. The office hummed with creativity and energy, my team thriving under the culture I had nurtured. And every so often, when I caught my reflection in the glass walls or glanced at the city skyline, I remembered how far I'd come, from a trembling teenager dismissed by her own mother to a woman who had claimed her worth on her own terms. One morning, I held the silver locket in my hands, feeling its familiar weight. It had been with me through every late night, every setback, and every small victory. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry anymore. It was a symbol of resilience, independence, and the love of someone who had always believed in me when no one else did. I smiled softly, thinking about that drawer my father had mentioned so long ago. Opening it had been more than discovering financial security. It had been about reclaiming my story, my voice, and my place in the world. I realized that the true inheritance he left me wasn't the money, but the freedom to write my own ending. As I prepared for a meeting that afternoon, adjusting my silk blouse and straightening the stack of notes on my desk, I felt a calm, unshakable strength. The past had shaped me, yes, but it no longer defined me. I had made peace with it, learned from it, and transformed it into power. I glanced at the locket one last time before tucking it back beneath my blouse and stepping out into the sunlight. Whatever came next, I was ready, fully aware of my worth, my voice, and the life I had built with my own hands. And in that quiet, unassuming moment, I realized something simple, profound, and true. I didn't need anyone's approval to be whole. I had earned my place in the world, and no one, past or present, could take that away.